Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Anthony Hinnon, the Center Square's Pennsylvania reporter. Joining me today is the Center Square's Pennsylvania editor, Kristen Smith. Kristen, we are looking at possibly the final lap in the state's budget process. We have a signed budget, but the Senate is also being called back for session. Why? What's happening?
So the Senate did announce earlier this week that they will return on August 30th, which is somewhat rare as they're normally on an extended summer break till the third or fourth week of September, as they were scheduled to be this time as well. But the Senate president said we're going to come back early because, as you know, as you just said, we do have a signed budget. You know, if you open up your own Excel spreadsheet and you look at everything you're going to spend in a month or a year, that part of the state budget is done. But we have some accompanying pieces of legislation that are equally important that explain how we're going to spend that money and where exactly it's going to go to. And so those couple bills have been on hold essentially for the last several months, and the state can't spend major parts of the budget without them. The Senate says, okay, we're going to come back early to get those done. So that is, an indication that, they will hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, that this could be finished up within a month or so.
So does that mean that we'll see the House coming back too, or what's happening on their end?
This is a great question. So the House is still not scheduled to return until they won't come back till the third week of September. And that's crucial because they have a special election coming up September 19th. And if you are a glass half empty kind of person, you might think that this is strategic on their part. The legislature is nothing but not consistent in giving mixed messaging. So, of course, when asked, the House said, we're still talking with the Senate. They wouldn't agree that anything was finalized on these bills, that there was any sort of, grease on the wheels to get this moving. And as I said, with a special election coming up, if they came back before that special election, technically, we would have an even tie in the House of Republican and Democrat, and that might open the door for some less than preferred bills or less than agreed to bills and policies to suddenly appear in these code bills. And so there is a strategic advantage from them to not come back sooner. Of course, that means that code bills, if the Senate should pass them in the meantime, will be sitting untouched for several weeks until they do come back. That's not to say they won't, that there won't be some sort of fair agreement here that they come to, but in a little, it's hard to say exactly when they'll be back, but just know that at this time there are no plans to change.
So there's not actually a finalized deal then?
Yeah, it's basically deja vu from the summer for a recall of what happened. The Senate passed a $45.5 billion budget, which was pretty much exactly what Shapiro wanted, and then said, all right, we're gone for the summer. The House got it, said they never agreed to it, and basically threw their hands up and said, okay, we're going home. And both sides stayed home for several weeks. And from the Democratic perspective and the governor's perspective, the Senate Republicans went rogue on this. They passed a bill without ever having a, agreement between all three chambers. And so this was a bad faith move on their part. And so now the tenor of the conversations is much less adversarial. However, there is no final agreement. Still, House Democrats are saying we're still in negotiations. We're still talking. So that does feel like there hasn't been a big change in perspective or a change in procedure of how we're moving forward on this.
So it's looking like we are remaining in a political Pennsylvania production of Waiting for Godot.
I think that's a fair way to categorize it.
Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. For Kristen Smith, this is Anthony Hinnon. Please subscribe, and thanks for listening.